in the summer. But unlike Joe Barry, my contract, at least to do the Matt Schneidman show, does expire the week after the season ends. So we'll be going Monday through Friday. Today was locker cleanout day. The Packers, normally do it day after their season ends, but they got back from San Francisco around 5 a.m. Central Time on Sunday. So Matt LaFleur gave everyone the day off on Sunday, came in today, meetings with players, coaches, assistants. Those will continue, I'm assuming, throughout the week. Locker room was open for a little over an hour today. Players spoke. LaFleur spoke for about 33 minutes. A lot of debriefing. The loss still stings for them. And we'll dive into, obviously, the game. We'll dive into some stuff players said. We'll dive into what LaFleur said. We'll dive into Joe Barry's contract status, his future, obviously. A lot to get to this week. Season's over, but there is no dearth. Dearth means lack of, right?
Correct, yes.
I think.
Yes.
There is no dearth of topics to talk about.
You could say there's a wealth of topics to talk about.
There's a wealth of topics to talk about. I'm going to take off my jacket because it's very warm in here, but also because I'm wearing Iron Jock if you're watching the stream.
Oh, yeah. We're both now, I think for the first time, maybe we're both, clad in Iron Jock, visibly clad in Iron Jock. So there you go. It's very nice. So how's your trip?
It was horrible. It's absolutely horrendous.
I already knew the answer to that because you were not here on Friday.
Well, people who are regular listeners and viewers of this show, probably around 5 of you, I got on the plane around 6 a.m. in Green Bay to fly to O'Hare, and I had a slight tickle in the back of my throat, but, there have been people in Green Bay media sick the past couple weeks just with a cough. So I was like, okay, if I have a little scratch in the back of my throat, I'm fine. I got to O'Hare, and I didn't feel too great. Then on the plane from Chicago to San Francisco, I really started feeling icky. I get to my hotel. I'm like, Doug, I don't think I can do the show.
Yeah. I
threw up 4 times on Friday night in my hotel room. And no, I did not have a single alcoholic drink that night, the night before that. So it was whatever's going around. I'm not going to name names, but there are several other people in the Green Bay Beat Corps who have been sick before me and after me. So something's just going around. Daniel Whelan was sick. He came in the locker room the other day, 10 seconds after he was listed as questionable on the injury report with an illness. So everyone's getting it to some degree. As you can probably tell, I'm congested right now, but it is not COVID. I tested for COVID, negative for that. So we're all square there. Anyway, let's talk NFL Combine. That starts in a month. No, I'm just kidding. It does.
We'll get to that. We've got a whole week of
that's the
postseason
thing.
shows.
Last season, the Packers season ended on January 9th, and it's like, okay, month and a half, 7 weeks until the Combine. By the time Brian Gutekunst talks, I'm assuming later this week, it'll be 4 weeks until the NFL Combine. Short break, then we're right back into it, which is the beauty of it for a single 28-year-old who lives in Green Bay like myself, who has nothing else to do than cover the Packers.
Well, I mean, you're a football guy, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would think that, any football is good football. You got the conference championship games coming up this weekend. I'm sure you'll be interested in the Super Bowl as a football insider. And
of course,
then you get to turn it around and, you get to go cover the Combine and then the draft and then rookie mini camp. And then OTAs, and then mini camp, and then before you know it, we're back into the 105th season of Packers football.
So let's debrief from Saturday's game a little bit. I want to pinpoint the time I thought the Packers were actually going to win the game, and that was after Aaron Jones caught that 2-point conversion. I said, okay, they not only went for 2, they got it. This could really be sort of a turning point in not only the game, but the perception of the Green Bay Packers and Matt LaFleur, who have been bullied in the playoffs by Kyle Shanahan's teams and Robert Saleh and DeMeco Ryans. I think DeMeco Ryans was the defensive coordinator in 2021.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. I want to make sure I get that right. Anyway, I thought the Packers were going to win that game, as I'm sure he was the DC, as I'm sure most people did. Packers were 9.5-point underdogs, but They held firm. Sure, their first 3 drives went into the red zone and only resulted in 6 points. But the Packers made Brock Purdy look pretty uncomfortable back there. He made some really nice throws, but they made Brock Purdy look uncomfortable. And they bottled up Christian McCaffrey for the most part compared to what McCaffrey normally does. Instead of, except for that 39-yard touchdown run he had. And sure, there were some lapses on defense and, offense, but the Packers, I think, outplayed the 49ers and not deserved to win that game, because if they deserved to win that game, they probably would have. But the Packers showed us that what we have seen the past 2 months was not a fluke. This was a team that deserved to play against any team in the NFL. Going into this game, it was okay. They beat the Cowboys, but the Cowboys, struggled stopping the run, and they couldn't run on the Packers, which is their weakness. Well, Christian McCaffrey really only had one explosive run, I think. And yes, Deebo Samuel was out, but Nick Bosa was held in check. Jordan Love didn't have to do anything, too difficult. He wasn't, brought down 18 times like that 49ers front is capable of doing. I really thought the Packers were going to win that game. Like I said, as I'm sure most people did.
Mm-hmm.
And then this Packers season ended the same way their last playoff appearance did. And the same way multiple others before that have, with a debilitating loss to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, this one was in similar fashion to the 2021 divisional round because the Packers missed a kick. In 2021, it was blocked at the end of the first half, Mason Crosby's field goal, because Tyler Lancaster didn't really move to block his guy on the wing, and because of a late gaffe in decision-making by the quarterback. The last one being Aaron Rodgers throw into double coverage for Devontae Adams deep. And this one being Jordan Love committing one of Tom Clement's 3 mortal sins of playing the position, which is throwing late and across the middle.
Yeah.
Now, if you watch that throw live, and let me preface what I'm about to say by saying this. This loss is not because of Anders Carlson. It's not because of Jordan Love's decision-making. It's not because of the red zone struggles. It's not because of the missed tackles. It's not because of the dropped interceptions. It's because of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Matt LaFleur is completely right in saying, I know the kick's going to get a lot of attention, but it's a lot of stuff. And he's right. And that's what makes this loss most painful for Packer fans, is you can pinpoint maybe 6 different things in that game. The missed tackle on George Kittle by Jonathan Owens that resulted in a 32-yard catch and run. The missed tackle by Darnell Savage in the hole on Christian McCaffrey that results in a 39-yard touchdown run. Darnell Savage's drop, what might have been a pick 6. Keyshawn Nixon's drop pick. Anders Carlson's missed kick. Jordan Love hitting one of the 2 checkdowns to Aaron Jones or Tucker Kraft. Jordan Love maybe just living to fight another day on the last drive of the game. That's 7 things right there. If one of those things goes right, the Packers might win this game.
Yeah.
But that's the Green Bay Packers for you. They crush you. And I've seen people say it, even when fans go into this game with no expectations, the Packers still find a way to crush their souls. And that's what's most painful, because, Doug, I'm interested to hear your thought. The 30,000-foot view of this season should be, this was nothing but a resounding success.
Absolutely.
They found their guy in Jordan Love. They found a solid nucleus to surround him with. They found some success late in the season on the defensive side. The Packers should be a formidable force in the NFL in the future. Not 5 years from now, 6 months from now. And not just as a fringe playoff team, but a Super Bowl contender. So congrats, Green Bay. You enjoyed 6 months of uncertainty. Now you're back in regular Super Bowl contention, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be the 30,000-foot view. But at the same time, I think fans are allowed to wallow in the sting of, if one of those things goes right, we shock the world and beat the 49ers and are playing in Detroit this weekend.
Sure. I mean, it's reminiscent in some ways of the 2014 NFC Championship game. And I know for a lot of fans, that's the most painful loss that they've ever suffered because they were up by 2 scores with like 4 minutes left. They had the ball, and Mike McCarthy stopped playing football. He just run up the middle, run up the middle, run up the middle, punt, run up the middle, run up the middle, run up the middle, punt. And I know that game was, I still go back to Super Bowl 32 because they were double-digit favorites against the Denver Broncos and just played an absolutely horse crap game, especially defensively. Offensively, they were okay. Defensively, they were atrocious. The quote-unquote fart in the wind, if you will, from Ron Wolf. That game to me is the most painful Packers loss of all time. A lot of people point to the 2014 NFC Championship game, but I would point out that the Seahawks were heavily favored in that game as well. The Packers had I wouldn't say they didn't have any business being there, but nobody thought they were going to actually win the game. Nobody, fans thought they were probably going to win, but that's what fans do. But any objective observer said, Seattle's going to cruise on the way all the way into the Super Bowl. The Packers had a chance. They frittered it away. Kind of the same thing, and here's where the similarities are valid. They had to have like a million things go wrong. And any one of those things, if it didn't go wrong, the Packers were going to still win that game. But every single thing that could have possibly gone wrong went wrong. And the Packers wound up losing that game in overtime to Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. So, yeah, I mean, it's crushing. It seems like it happens on the reg, right? With the Packers in the postseason. And it's unfortunate, but that's why I try to take the 30,000-foot view of it. And if this were 4 years ago, 5 years ago, even last year, maybe not last year because Rodgers was dealing with a broken thumb, but maybe 2 years ago. Those Super Bowl aspirations are when the season begins. And you're going into training camp thinking that this could be the year because they've got all the pieces assembled. Going into this season, obviously that wasn't the case. So that's why I can't, and I also think that this is the mindset of those that showed up at Austin Straubel Airport in the middle of the night at like 4 a.m. when they did get back into town after the loss at San Francisco, just to, cheer on their team. They wouldn't have done this if this was 2 years ago. They would have been pissed off that they lost. But they were so happy. Fans were so happy. And I think the team, in a week will be very happy about taking that 30,000 foot view of it, saying, you know what, we accomplished a lot this year. We answered questions that needed to be answered, and we found some guys that are young and that can play in this league. So that's what I choose to look at when I see this team. And, if you're a Packers fan, I think everyone should be really, really optimistic about what they've got that is coming back next year that really can help this team win in a wide open NFC.
Without a doubt. And, we have 4 shows left this week, so we'll get into looking toward the future. We'll go through all their free agents or pending free agents, make guesses on who's going to be back, who's not, whether there will be any coaching staff changes. We'll get into, one of those topics today, being Joe Barry. But as Matt LaFleur said, and has said multiple times, only one team's happy at the end of every season. So I respect any fan, any player, any coach who's just distraught and devastated, not just when their season ends in the fashion that it did with the Packers the other day, but when any season ends. Because guess what? We don't see kind of the bonds these guys form behind closed doors. They may never play together again. I was about to say they may never see each other again, but, they'll catch up in the offseason. Guys talk about there's so much turnover every offseason. I saw a picture of that Evan Siegel took. Evan Siegel, the Packers' longtime legendary team photographer, who takes pictures at locker cleanout day, and it's Luke Tenuta and Josh Nijman sitting next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
2 guys that, you don't really bat an eye at, but they share a locker next to each other. Who knows if one or either of them are going to be back? It's like, that's a bond that's broken up because that's just the nature of the NFL. It's a business. That's how it rolls. So the end of the season is abrupt, is unpleasant for everybody, but especially for a team that really thought it was going somewhere. John Runyon Jr. talked today, among other things, about how he really felt they had something. I think the sentiment was shared among Packer fans, not just before the game, but especially when the Packers took that 21-14 lead.
Mm-hmm. But a 21-14 lead is fleeting in the NFL, as we
Sure.
all know. I mean, that can be erased on a kickoff, for crying out loud. I understand that it stings, but I was kind of thinking about, to your point, I mean, guys that you don't bat an eyelash over, you can still form a bond with some of these guys. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. One of his closest friends is Matt Flynn, backup quarterback. You don't think a whole lot about, but they still go to the Kentucky Derby together every single year. So I mean, these bonds do form. They really do. And there's a human element to it, of course. And
Of course.
I know that, we're going to get into the Joe Barry situation coming up, but there's a bond there between he and Matt LaFleur that go back to when they were both assistants in Los Angeles. And Matt LaFleur doesn't want to fire his friend. Now, sometimes, as I like to say, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And sometimes the boss has to make the boss decisions and they're uncomfortable. And the boss decisions suck. But I don't think he wants to do that. He's got an affinity for Joe Barry. And he was talking about that last week after, a couple of questions about how proud are you of this defense and how did Joe turn it around? He's like, if anybody could, it was Joe.
Right.
So it's, you look forward to the future. You look forward to what the team is going to look like in 2024, but that doesn't mean that, those guys that aren't going to be back in 2024, it doesn't mean that they're not missed. And I talked about Devin Chandler a couple of weeks ago, one of the 3 Virginia wide receivers that was tragically shot and killed. I mean, he had voluntarily left the University of Wisconsin football program, but his former teammates were still devastated. They had to cancel all team activities because they needed to bring in grief counselors. Understandably so, because this guy was their brother, even though he's not even on their team anymore, even though he left the team voluntarily. So these bonds form and they're real and they cut really, really deeply. So yeah, difficult decisions are coming, but it's part of the game. It's part of the business.
For sure. And you saw some of that emotion come out today. Lauren Helmbrecht from Channel 5 posted a video on Twitter of John Runyon Jr. Answering her question about what it has meant to wear the G. John Runyon Jr. probably knows he's not going to be back next season. Sean Ryan took a handful of his snaps as Runyon battled through some injuries that we didn't really know about. Packers want to get younger, want to get cheaper at a position they can afford to. But that's what happens in the NFL. Your everyday life for the past 4 years is taken out from under you because a team can save a couple $1 million. A team can get a little younger at a position they can afford to. That's the nature of the business. But as you said, there are humans behind it, and that's a good example of one of them. After this break, we'll get into the biggest storyline surrounding the Green Bay Packers right now. That is, will they have the same defensive coordinator next season as they did the past 3 seasons? Matt LaFleur didn't give much about that topic today. We'll dive into it, maybe make some predictions. I know Doug's not a big game prediction guy. We'll maybe try and get it out of him to see if he thinks Joe Barry's going to be back. So stick with us right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on The Game. Jock backs the pack with a free backpack offer. Now through February 4th, when you buy $75 or more of Iron Jock performance gear, take 25% off of your entire order and get a free Iron Jock drawstring backpack, a $24.99 value. Not $24.99. That would be almost $2,500. That'd be a terrible deal. A good deal is $24.99 when you use promo code 25backpack. That's promo code 25backpack. I believe there's a space in between the 5 and the B. Now through February 4th. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com.
Yeah, it's Iron Jock, not Louis Vuitton. Come on now.
Joe Barry. I think Matt LaFleur brings him back.
I kind of do too.
But there's still a decision to be made. For what it's worth, I went back and looked at what Matt LaFleur said the day after the Packers lost to the Lions to end the 2022 season. When asked if Joe Barry was going to be back, Matt LaFleur said, and I quote, "That's what I anticipate, yes." Today, he wasn't really asked directly if Joe's going to be back because LaFleur got out ahead of it and said, "I know there's going to be a lot of long-term big picture questions. I'm not there yet, fellas," which is extremely disrespectful to the women in the room because they are not fellas. Anyway, he said, "We're just starting the process."
I'm sure Lauren was devastated.
Oh, it's not just her.
Stephanie Sutton.
Ellie. I don't think Stephanie was there, but Stephanie,
Okay.
Ellie French.
Ellie French. Sure,
a couple
from
others.
Fox 11. Sure. Yeah. Quite a few.
He said, "I gave everybody off yesterday. I came in yesterday and watched the tape, all 3 phases, but we're just getting into the evaluation portion right now. I expected nothing different." It is worth noting, I know there's been a belief, a wide-held one on social media that Joe Barry's contract is expiring, so the Packers can just let him go or let him explore other opportunities or amicably part ways or just not renew him. I was told today that his contract is not expiring. So if they are to move on, it would be a firing. Now, I don't know if that changes what goes into LaFleur's decision, because at the end of the day, you have to set your defense up best for success with the best play caller for the situation you see fit. I think he keeps Joe Barry, but he has a decision to make, and he wasn't as committal to Barry with regards to the future as he was last year. Does that mean he's going to fire him? I don't know. Who knows? But if you look at what the Eagles did, the Eagles just fired their defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, about a week after their season ended. It's going to take some time. And that was for a defensive coordinator who they had already stripped of play calling duties. When they gave it to Matt Patricia, still took a week after the season ended to fire the DC, who wasn't really even the defensive coordinator anymore. I don't know how long it's going to take to make a decision on Joe Barry, but I wouldn't be glued to your screens for the next couple days. Matt LaFleur did not seem like he's in any rush.
Sure. But it's almost in a sense like how you don't want to be last to hire your head coach when you're in a head coaching search as well, because if there's somebody that you're targeting, either they may not want to make a lateral move if they don't have a contract that's expiring. If there's somebody else that's out there that makes sense for your personnel and scheme that you've been interested in that is not a defensive coordinator right now, somebody else might snap them up, or they might get promoted to their current team. So, there's not urgency, but there's a little bit of urgency. You want to figure out who your defense. That's a major position. You want to know who your defensive coordinator is going into your offseason program. I know that, that nobody's back until tax day, but you want to know who your coaches are sooner rather than later. So I don't think there's going to be anything this week, but this is a decision that he's going to have to make. And whether it's an expiring contract or not, it's still, you can term it however you want. It's still a firing. It's still a decision. It's still a moving on or bringing back. So when it comes to coaches' contracts, the Green Bay Packers are immune. They don't have an owner, and they've got all the money in the world that they can just pay these guys out, and it doesn't count against the salary cap. So neither here nor there. They'll pay whatever it takes to get, their defensive coordinator in if it's one that they target that they want.
It's a massive decision because the offense seems like it's set up for great success for the next however many years. If the Packers get the defensive coordinator right, that could set them up for consistent Super Bowl contention. That's why it's such a big deal. And before we get to Mo from Illinois on the line, I just want to read a couple stats about the defense, not just this season. And this is with regards to the fact that Matt LaFleur isn't just going to base his decision on Joe Barry off the last 4 games. Vikings, Bears, Cowboys, and then against the 49ers, what LaFleur said after the game on Saturday was what he thought the defense did was fantastic. Fantastic was the word he used. So that's a solid month for Joe Barry after his back was against the wall, after it seemed like he was squarely on the hot seat. Now, Matt LaFleur's not going to let a month skew his view of the last 3 years. So the last 3 years, regular season and playoffs, with Barry as their DC, the Packers ranked 12th in points allowed per game, 21st in EPA per play on defense, tied for 13th in takeaways, 30th in rush defense EPA, 14th in pass defense EPA, 25th in opponent third down conversion percentage.
It's not great.
And 9th in defensive red zone EPA per play.
Okay.
So mediocre overall.
Yeah. Pretty mid.
They have dealt with significant extended injuries to their 2 highest paid players on defense, Jair Alexander and Rashawn Gary. Now, when Rashawn Gary suffered his injury, he wasn't paid like he is now, but missed the second half of last season, was on a snap count for like the first 6 weeks this season. Jair Alexander missed 9 games to injury this year, missed 13 games in 2021. Joe Barry's dealt with a lot in terms of injuries this season. Campbell, Walker, Savage, Stokes, all those guys missed extended time. There is an argument to be made that Joe Barry should be back. There's also an argument to be made he shouldn't be. Matt LaFleur isn't going to listen to the Twitter streets. He's going to gather all his information and then make a decision. How soon that comes, I do not know. My prediction is Joe Barry is back. I think everyone kind of has that feeling right now. But as you said, Doug, the longer this takes, the bigger the risk there is of the top DCs available or top DC prospects available being snatched up. So, Mo from Illinois, what do we got?
Hi, guys. Not going to lie, I'm still grieving from that heartbreaking loss. I don't know why this one stings a lot more than the other ones in the past.
Oh, I do.
Does this one sting more than 2014?
No. 2014 stings way more than this.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Wow. Yeah, it's been a while since this one has stung, since the playoff loss has stung the way this is. Because I think it's, this group was so tight-knit, and they shocked so many people. They shocked us fans. They overachieved so much. Like, it was a great story. They seemed like a team of destiny. And, to lose the way they did, they had the ball game in their hands. And what hurts me the most is, people are going to blame Anders Carlson. Some may even blame Joe Barry on that last possession. But to me, it's like the offense had every chance to close out that game. And that's what stings me the most. Like, after that Aaron Jones run, that long run, I thought we were at least going to get some points out of that, potentially even a touchdown and ice the game. So they had it in their hands. They couldn't get it done. And now the season's over. Now I'm going to take a nice long break from the Packers because I definitely need an off season myself because all this emotional investment is tiring sometimes. And, I look forward to next season and everything like that. And you guys have been awesome. I love you, Matt and Doug. You guys, your show has provided an outlet to unwind a little bit. So I appreciate you guys forever. We definitely shared some fun moments this year. And hopefully we get to do it again in the summer. Love you guys, and go Pack, go forever.
Mo, you're the best. The show would not be possible without regular callers like you. You are our most devoted caller. We love you too. Appreciate you. I'm getting emotional.
You are. You're getting, we'll be back. I wonder what Mo's off season looks like. What do you do in the off season?
He's an X-ray tech, Doug, remember?
It's true, but like a hobby. Sometimes
that's a good question. I don't know.
Like I tell my wife sometimes, you need a hobby. Everybody needs something else to do.
That's true. But on a serious note, that means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks,
we appreciate you calling. Appreciate all the good questions. You're not just a crazy caller, but we appreciate those too. I will say, Tom Silverstein mentioned this in the presser today. I did not get to talk to Aaron Jones after the game. I was in the podium for a while with Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur before going into the locker room when it was almost empty. Apparently, Aaron Jones tweaked his hamstring on that run, and that seems to be why he slowed up, because he kind of stops and then cuts back toward the middle of the field on that 53-yard run. So I think he tweaked his hamstring. That's what Spoon said. So that might have explained why he slowed up. Matt LaFleur said he was not aware of that at the time, which LaFleur said was probably good. So I don't even know how that would affect Jones's status if the Packers had won. Who else we got on the line?
We got John in Muskego.
John in Muskego. We got 2 callers today. What do we got, John? Let it all out.
Hey, man, Doug. So, a couple things. I bought a Jair Alexander jersey a year and a half ago.
Oh, I don't know where this one's
Sort
going.
of. So, a couple things, right? So, my brother travels with the team. He does security for the Packers.
Okay.
I mean, Ja has basically milked that injury for 5 weeks. So you guys are in the media. Do you hear anything about him milking his injury? Do you see what type of prima donna he's essentially become? As soon as he got paid, he became a prima donna. And I know he shows up on people's, there was a reporter, I think he went over her shoulder and like, but when he walks on the field as a team captain, when it's all about him, when he's on, he's on. But it's frustrating watching a guy with so much talent take weeks and weeks off. And I'm going to flip it and ask about this. You've got the guy from Michigan. Is it Minter? Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator for Michigan. If Harbaugh goes bye-bye, you got that DC. You got Jim Leonard. You got Wink Martindale out of the Giants. Weren't they number 3 in terms of total defense? So for Matt LaFleur to sit on his hands, not hire a guy who has strong ties either to the state like Jim Leonard, guys that have strong ties to the league like Wink Martindale, that's frustrating. So I think it's going to be difficult to get rid of Jair because he's owed so much money, right? But if we dump salary like Jair's salary, if we dump Bakhtiari's salary, we can invest in some strong safeties, some cornerbacks, and we definitely need 2 linebackers. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but there's so much need. I mean, Campbell is just washed up and over the hill. He says he's a dog, and he tells it to all of his guys, unleash the dogs, unleash the dogs. That guy is so over the hill, and watch his play. Watch this last game and the game before that. He's out there on one wing, barely playing. Packers need a lot of help, and it's really frustrating to see them play for 58 minutes and lose it in the last 2 minutes.
I don't blame you for feeling that way, John. Appreciate the call. I'm going to try and remember everything he mentioned there.
There was a lot there.
With Jair, I like how we're citing security sources. His brother, who travels with the team, saying Jair's milking an injury. Listen, I can't say that for certain. At least nothing I've heard on the record says that Jair was milking the injury. He came back and played extremely hurt against the Raiders, all 64 snaps, just because it was Devontae Adams. Probably re-aggravated the injury because he then missed the following game. That was the back injury. And then with the shoulder, when he came back against the Panthers, he said it's still kind of limited stuff he could do. So I'm not going to question a guy's toughness. And to say he mailed it in after he got paid, the season after he got paid, he was named a second-team All-Pro. You don't get second-team All-Pro by mailing it in. So that kind of disproves that generic notion that he mailed it in after he got paid. This season was definitely an interesting one for Jair because it was obviously more than just the coin toss that resulted in his suspension. Matt LaFleur said it's never just one thing. There was probably more to why he didn't travel to the Giants game, as I hinted at the time. Matt LaFleur said today Jair was terrific after the suspension. Now, that was tough on everyone, but it seems like him and the organization are in a better spot. I anticipate him being back. Not only is he owed a lot, but he's very good when he's healthy enough. He battled through the ankle to come back and play against the Cowboys. Battled through a re-aggravation of the ankle to play against the 49ers. This isn't a guy who's just going to lie down and keel over. He's not just mailing it in and saying, oh, I'm not playing because I'm injured. The Raiders, you could make a case the Panthers game, the Cowboys game when he came up with a pick, 49ers game after he re-aggravated the injury. You can question what he did off the field, of which we still don't know the exact specifics on the record. But to question a dude's toughness, sure, maybe some guys don't persevere through stuff as much as others. That's probably the case. But I'm never going to accuse a guy of not being tough. You don't get to the NFL by not being tough. And to say he just mailed it in after he got paid, that's just factually incorrect because he made second team All-Pro in 2022, a couple months after he got paid.
I think it's clear to observers, and I don't think you have to be in the locker room to just kind of see that there was a bit of a disconnect between,
Of course,
the coaching staff and number 23. It's unfortunate because, again, he's so important to the team, and we've seen the kind of player that he is and that he can be. I don't know. I hesitate to question guys' injury status because they know their bodies better than anyone else does. And I'm certainly not a medical professional, but there was some sort of disconnect, obviously. As you know, Matt LaFleur, even like you said, talked about that it's never just one thing. So, but he also said and talked about it repeatedly after all of that had happened, their communication has been better and Ja's been great. And he's done everything that they've asked him to do since he came back from the suspension. So, can guys change? I'd like to think they can. Sometimes guys need wake-up calls too. And maybe that was the wake-up call that Jair Alexander needed. To just, he's always going to be himself. Like when he went behind that reporter and went viral on that video. That's just Ja being Ja.
Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up. I did not realize what he was talking about. I thought there was something. I obviously know what he's referencing now.
Yeah.
I thought he was referencing something perhaps more inappropriate.
No. I think that's all it was.
Professional than that. Well, yeah, that's what I'm assuming now because I'm assuming I would have heard of something else.
Sure. But I also like to see that because that happened after the suspension as well, because it showed that he's still got a personality. He's not going to tamp down his personality, but maybe he can be a better teammate.
It's possible. And then, yes, they do need at least one more inside linebacker. I would be stunned if Devondre Campbell is back this offseason. And then what else did he ask about? He did throw a lot at us.
Yeah, he did. He said, I don't think they need as much help as he does. I think most of the help that they need is on defense.
They're certainly going to need at least one more safety.
Yeah.
Owens is an unrestricted free agent. Darnell Savage is an unrestricted free agent. So a lot of questions to answer for the Packers this offseason. We'll get into all those. We got to get to one more break. On the other side, more debriefing from locker cleanout. Matt LaFleur's season-ending lengthy press conference today. So stick with us right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on The Game.
Feel it. And I'm still in the murder business. I can hold you down like I'm giving lessons in physics. Right. You should want a bad like this. Huh? Drop it low and pick it up just like this. Yeah. Cup of Ace, cup of Goose, cup of Chris. I heal something worth a half a ticket on my wrist. Taking all the
Match Schneidman Show wrapping up here Monday, January 22nd. We got a couple calls to get to. The first one I'm excited about because on my flight from O'Hare to San Francisco on Friday, I was seated next to two lovely ladies who were coming from the Milwaukee area to watch their Packers. And I believe we have one of them on the line.
Hi, Sally.
Yes. Hi, Matt. Yes, it's Sally. I sat next to you on the plane.
Oh, yes. How are you?
Great. Although I must say I started to get a little bit sick yesterday.
Oh, no. Are you
so
okay?
Now I know who to blame. I know who to blame for that.
Well, it was your sister who was sitting to your right, correct?
It was my sister. Yes.
She was coughing before I had a little cough too. So maybe you got sick from her.
Maybe so.
I think everyone got it. Anyway, I appreciate you giving me a call. It was great meeting you.
It was great. And I wanted to say that for a lot of us, this playoff loss doesn't sting, I think, as much as you think it does.
Why's that?
Well, I mean, we looked at these two playoff games as, bonus games this year. We never expected to be there. It was an unexpected surprise. And although it's disappointing that we lost, I'm not feeling bad about it. I mean, we had a great time in San Francisco. San Francisco fans, for the most part, were really nice.
Okay.
And we had a great time there, and it's, just building for the future.
I like that perspective. That's a glass half full perspective. I understand either way. I'm not going to tell fans how they should feel, but like I said, after the sting, if you're feeling a sting of the loss subsides, there's a lot to be happy about. Not a lot of franchises can just automatically replace a future Hall of Fame quarterback with a guy who looks like a franchise quarterback after 1 year. So definitely a lot of reason for optimism. I'm glad you're feeling okay right now, correct?
Yeah, just a little sniffle and sore throat.
Okay, well, if it was me, I apologize. I started feeling a little bad, as I'm sure you could imagine, on that flight. It wasn't like it was, when I was in my apartment, and I had a job to do, so I apologize. But glad to hear you're doing okay. It was great meeting you. Really appreciate you giving us a call. Let me ask you this. Are the Packers winning the Super Bowl next year?
I think there's a good chance. I wouldn't bet against it.
I need a percentage chance the Packers win the Super Bowl next year.
65.
Ooh,
wow, that's pretty high. Okay.
That's pretty high. Thank you, Sally. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I don't know if Lauren's going to be able to top that.
She can try.
I kind of feel bad that she's blaming me for getting her sick, but I kind of don't blame her.
Well, I mean, it might have been her sister.
It might have been.
You never know.
I'm going to go with that. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
What do you want to know? I don't know if you're going to ask something, if you just want to talk. What's up?
Oh, no, I'm not going to talk Sally, but I do have a question.
Okay.
So I was asking around today in the locker room, and I asked LaFleur, so I'll ask the two of you. What was a moment or a game that you feel encapsulated the 2023 Packers?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a really good one. I thought, for me, the turning point was Pittsburgh, even though they lost. But I don't know if that encapsulated. Are you just
saying that because that's what LaFleur said?
No, I truly believe that. I go back and, I mean, we do tape the show. We can go back and, rewind that Monday show.
I think it was the Detroit game, the second Detroit game, not the first one.
Right. The first one was pretty bad.
I think it was the second Detroit game because that was the first game where it was like, okay, this team's kind of for real. They took the ball to start that game. They went down and scored, and it kind of established we're no longer a young team. We're no longer this inexperienced team who just gets pushed around kind of mentality. Packers had been bullied, bodied, whatever adjective or verb you want to use, the past couple times they had played Dan Campbell's teams. This was kind of the first shifting of the narrative that Matt LaFleur isn't just, well, he's still getting bullied by Kyle Shanahan's teams, but with regards to in the division, this young team, that was kind of a narrative shifting game. Yes, it only moved them to 5-6. They still lost a couple more after that. They still had work to do. But in terms of taking the ball, scoring, shocking that crowd, establishing themselves as, a force to be reckoned with. That was kind of Jordan Love's coming out party, I would say. Sure, he showed some things in that Steelers game 2 weeks prior that Matt LaFleur has mentioned as the turning point. But in terms of like a narrative shifter, I don't know a moment from that game, but I would probably say the first play of that game, if you want to pick a moment when they took the shot to Christian Watson. But if I was to choose a game, I would say the Detroit game, because that really showed, okay, these young Packers aren't going to be, pushed around anymore.
I'm going to say the Minnesota game, the second one, because
you can only have one answer. You're just picking every game now?
No, I said the turning point was Pittsburgh. She asked what what game encapsulated the season.
Okay.
And I'm going to say for that, I'll say Minnesota, because I think it showed what they can be. And I know Minnesota was shorthanded. I get that. They were playing with, their fourth quarter. Well, let's see, their first string quarterback, their second string quarterback who hadn't played in 2 months. But so they had some quarterback issues, obviously. But they showed what they could do. They showed what that offense could be. And it was a must-win game, and they won it. So I'm going to say the Minnesota game.
Lauren, what do you think it was?
Mine's more of a bigger picture moment, but it's every time after a loss where the players would tell us, we're right there. I think we have all the pieces. It's just 1 or 2 things away. And toward the middle of the season, when they were on a losing streak, maybe it's hard to hear that and think, do these guys actually believe that? Or are they just spouting or regurgitating messages to us? But it's true. For months, the players were telling us, hey, it's just 1 or 2 things. We're right there. We have all the components. And I'm just so in awe that they truly believed that, and it came to fruition, and they made it to the divisional round, because for a long time it could seem like they were just spouting words, but they truly believed, and that's why they made it so far.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I think regardless of what team you cover, if the team you cover is 1-8 or 4-6, or any team that isn't quite figuring it out, they're going to say, oh, we're only 1 or 2 pieces away. And the Packers, as Lauren said that throughout their lowest moments. And we could sit there and say, well, no, you're not really. You just lost to, the Lions. You got blown out. You just lost to the Vikings, got beaten pretty handily. Just lost to the Buccaneers and the Giants. Like, whatever loss, you could say, the Packers aren't really that close. But guess what? They were right. And it's cliche of them to say, we have everything we need in the locker room, or we have all the pieces. But if it doesn't come to fruition on the field, it's hard to believe. Packers showed us this year that they were right. And that's why the future is so bright, I think. Because, listen, if they don't make the playoffs or they lose to Dallas, then it's like, okay, Packers are going to be a team next year. We don't know how good they're going to be. They showed some promise. Now it's like Packers are going to be, I don't know if they're even going to be the division favorite with Detroit, who might win the Super Bowl, but the Packers are going to be right up there in terms of like a popular pick to make some noise in the league next year. And if you had said that before the start of this past season, that entering the 2024 season, the Packers are going to be a hot pick to make some noise, people would have said, well, something probably went right this season then.
Yeah. Just the depth that they showed on offense with the pass catchers, the first and second year guys, the wisdom in letting them all kind of grow together, the wisdom in not bringing in a veteran to show them the way, but also take away valuable reps from these guys. I think that was a huge, I don't know if it's a turning point, but I think that's certainly an inflection point that the Packers consciously made, that Brian Gutekunst consciously made.
Absolutely. And it paid off. It was a risky move. And as I wrote this past week, it was a risky gamble for Brian Gutekunst to entrust so much in the youth of this team. Who knows if it was going to work out, not just this season, but ever.
True.
And for it to work out right away, he's done a hell of a job. Set the Packers up really nicely for the future. Later in the week, we're going to get into who might be back, who might not be back. How's this team going to look next year? What moves should they make in free agency, the draft? They have the 25th pick. A lot to get into still with the season over. We got 4 days left of the Matt Schneidman show before we take a couple months break. As always, we appreciate everyone for listening. We got a bevy of callers. I hope Sally from Racine is feeling better. Seems like she's doing all right.
And Robert in Sussex, if you're out there, call back tomorrow.
Thank you, Robert. We'll take your call tomorrow. For Doug, I'm Matt. As always, we appreciate you listening. We'll catch you tomorrow.